Aloha and good afternoon. We begin with breaking news. Honolulu fire investigators are looking into what sparked a blaze at a high-rise condominium near Ke'eaumoku Street this morning.
Yeah, and the Red Cross is helping 3 residents who were displaced. Now, video of the 2 alarm fires showed thick smoke billowing from the 14th floor of the 19-story building on Amana Street at around 9 a.m. Residents reported smelling smoke from as far away as Kaka'ako. Now, firefighters searched the floors that were involved in the incident, and officials say fortunately no one was home at the time. The blaze was extinguished about half an hour later, and the only injury reported was one resident who suffered a laceration while descending the stairwell and evacuating the building.
Aloha and welcome to This Is Now. Our other top story, of course, is the weather. Let's send you live outside for a look at conditions over Honolulu. Right now, things aren't too bad, but here's some video that we got from across the state. This was over on Maui. This was sent in by one of our viewers there. You can see the river just raging as a result of the heavy rains. Of course, Maui was under and still is under a flash flood warning. This is some video from the Hana side of Maui from Tony DeJetli. Rough ocean conditions there. And of course, we also have some video from Kauai, the western end of the state. This is in Kapa'a. Some heavy rains coming down there. For more on this, let's send things over to our Guy Hagi.
The flood watch has been extended until this afternoon. It might even be extended until tomorrow because there is flooding conditions and that Kona low is very, very stubborn. It hasn't moved very much. So there is a statewide flood watch. That means flooding conditions are possible. Now notice those areas highlighted in red. That's because this morning we have very, very heavy amounts of rain for East Maui, East Hawaii Island. They are under a flash flood warning, which means flooding is now occurring, and that could happen easily across the rest of the state. Now, there's that very juicy Kona low. Lots of moisture down to the south. That's what's going to come up throughout the day. So again, the heaviest rain so far has been over on East Maui and East Hawaii Island, but there's going to be a lot of rain for Kauai and Oahu as well. So this is what we're expecting today, county by county. It's a first alert weather day for the entire state. We are expecting heavy rainfall statewide, and there could even be some afternoon thunderstorms, and there could be enough rain that could lead to more flooding. So the word of advice is if you live in an area that is flooded before, take precautions because you could see flooding conditions again today. Back to you, Ash, Dylan.
Thank you so much, Guy. In news out of the courts, convicted killer Cheeto Asuncion was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences for a pair of deadly stabbings on Hawaii Island. The 25-year-old pleaded guilty to attacking 4 homeless people last year, claiming he thought killing them would send them to a better place. 2 of the victims survived. The life sentences come with a chance of parole. And an HFD fire investigator says downed power lines due to high winds sparked a brush fire in Waianae 2 weeks ago. The fire broke out on November 14th near Haleahi Road, not far from Camp Waianae. HFD says the fire caused $122,000 in damage to a house, and the flames also damaged multiple chicken coops.
An Israeli man who survived last month's Hamas attack is speaking to students at the University of Cincinnati. Rachel Hirschheimer has more on this story of survival.
From partying to the sobering sounds of gunfire. These are the moments Romel Hai and his friends ran from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th when violence erupted out of nowhere.
Look at the sky and I see rockets just exploding very close to us.
They escaped to the parking lot, but when they got to their car, they realized they were in a war zone.
And one of the people came, opened the driver door, and I remember I saw a woman fell down to the floor, and she was full of blood. And then everybody screamed there, she was shot, she was shot.
The 3 men scrambled to find cover as the bullets started landing closer and closer.
We thought, okay, that's it. The terrorists find us, and they're gonna kill us all. Game over.
For the next 9 hours, they hid and did anything they could to survive.
if we won't take the decision that let's go to hide in the tree, I wouldn't be here right now, for sure.
It was a miracle for Rome and his friends. They made it home in one piece. But there were so many others who weren't so lucky, including his friend of 10 years.
Those people didn't survive. This is my friend Hezi.
He's still processing what happened and sharing his journey to show the world what took place on that horrific day.
It's a miracle that I think I here speak with you in one piece.
The House of Representatives is expected to vote at some point either today or tomorrow on whether or not to expel Republican Representative George Santos. Now, he addressed a crowd in front of the Capitol this morning and remains defiant. Bradley Blackburn has the details.
This is bullying.
Republican Representative George Santos refused to resign and lashed out at members of his own party who introduced a resolution aimed at ousting him.
I'm fighting to defend myself and to dispel each and every accusation.
This will be the third attempt to expel Santos, who faces 23 federal corruption charges. A report from the House Ethics Committee alleges Santos broke campaign finance laws by spending campaign funds on Botox, shopping, and personal travel.
This is very expansive. This is fraud. He refused to cooperate with the committee, which is our self-policing thing.
In the history of the House, only 5 members have been expelled. 3 took up arms for the Confederacy during the Civil War. 2 were convicted of federal crimes. Santos says expelling him without a conviction would set a new precedent.
This will haunt them in the future, where mere allegations are sufficient to have members removed from office when duly elected by their people in their respective states and districts.
Santos has introduced a motion to expel Representative Jamal Bowman from the House. The New York Democrat pleaded guilty to 1 count of falsely pulling a fire alarm in the Capitol last month. It would take 2/3 of the House to vote to expel Santos from Congress. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
Former President Donald Trump is once again under a gag order. A New York appellate court says it has reinstated it for his civil fraud trial, and it bans all parties in the case from making public comments about court staff. The judge overseeing the trial originally imposed the order and warns he plans to enforce it vigorously. An attorney for Trump says the appellate ruling marks a tragic day for the law. The higher court had temporarily blocked the gag order during its review. On the Garden Isle, the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative is a step closer to its first rate increase in 12 years. The Public Utilities Commission gave interim approval to a 7.95% rate hike. The KIUC originally wanted a nearly 9.5% increase. The PUC still needs to give final approval. If that happens, KIUC says the average monthly bill would go up about $16.
Take a look at this newly released video from the Navy. It gives us an underwater look of the 70-ton surveillance plane that's sitting on the ocean floor in Kaneohe Bay. The military says the P-8 Poseidon has 2 points of contact with coral reef. Divers spent the day surveying the aircraft that overshot the runway at the Marine base 9 days ago, and it's remained in the water ever since. The Navy is still developing a plan to remove the plane, and there are no clear details yet on exactly how they'll do that.
Maui Mayor Richard Bisson hopes a big property tax break will be enough incentive to get the owners of timeshares, short-term rentals, and non-owner occupied houses to rent those properties to wildfire survivors who lost their homes. Ben Gutierrez has more on this story.
Maui Mayor Richard Bisson is hoping a big property tax break will be enough to get owners of timeshares, short-term rentals, or non-owner occupied houses to rent those properties to wildlife survivors who lost their homes.
If you can contribute your unit, obviously we welcome that. If you're not able to, then we welcome you helping financially to make that a smoother and more spread out expense.
If Mayor Richard Bisson gets his way, about 30,000 qualifying property owners on Maui will have a choice to make. Those who offer long-term rentals to fire evacuees will get a tax break. Those who don't could pay higher taxes.
As time runs down to February 8th, 2024, when non-congregate sheltering ends, At that point, I mean, we need to use everything at our disposal because we're talking about human lives here.
The county says more than 6,600 fire survivors are still in non-congregate shelters, such as hotels and condos. Today, more than 800 evacuees began relocating yet again, as several Ka'anapali hotels make way for more tourists. Social workers were there with suitcases and a helping hand, but it's still a difficult transition.
When you're having to move as often as we're having to, without being notified that you will have to move until the day of, it brings up all this unsettled, unresolved trauma.
The hotels have been very accommodating up until this point, but they're moving back into business and there are still no homes available for these folks. And there are short-term rentals that are not being utilized for housing.
The mayor's new tax proposal would be voluntary for the owners of short-term rentals, non-owner occupied homes, and timeshares. But those with properties worth $1 million or more could face an unknown increase in property taxes if they don't volunteer. The Lahaina Strong Group that's been staging a so-called fish-in for housing is hopeful, but has doubts.
As I would like to say, this voluntary will work. I don't see it working, and I do think we are going to need to put some force on them, which is unfortunate, and it's what's right. You know what I mean? And we're not asking for these properties forever. We're just asking for these properties while these families get back on their feet.
Bison's proposal goes before the Maui County Council next week, Tuesday. Ben Gutierrez, Hawaii News Now.
And joining us for the first time in the H&N Digital Center is our Maui Bureau Chief Reporter, Chelsea Davis. Chelsea, thank you so much, first off, for all your tireless reporting on the Maui wildfire disaster. And I want to ask you, as a Maui native, what has it been like to cover this story in your hometown?
It's very emotional, honestly, being a Maui girl, born and raised. My family has been there for generations. It's so heartbreaking seeing what everyone is still going through after all these months, but it's also very rewarding. I truly believe that our stories and our coverage helps the people of Maui and my community, and that's why I know all of us work so hard, tirelessly, like you said, to put on our very best work every single day, because the people of Maui deserve that. Definitely. And people have often asked in conversations with me, they've asked about you, and they want to know, how do you essentially compartmentalize this and detach yourself? I don't know if separate myself is the right word, because I feel like I do grieve with my community as well. It's, as I mentioned, it's so heartbreaking. I go to the West Side specifically almost every day. I know our families up country in Kula as well has suffered great loss, but it's so emotional going to Lahaina, because that's where a lot of the fatalities are, and all the fatalities are, and that whole town needs rebuilding. So I go out there quite often, and as I drive there and I drive past the crosses, I still cry every single day, and I don't let that get away from me. I still feel the sadness, and I still grieve with my community, and I think that's what is important, because I try not to compartmentalize. I try to, be fully immersed in my stories. And when I talk to people and they share their stories with me about what they're going through and how they're still grieving and everything that they're still facing, I feel for them and I feel with them. And I think that's important. And that's what I get from the community, is they feel that I truly listen. I do hurt with them every single day. You are such an inspiration to so many, including right here in this newsroom. So we appreciate you and all your work. I want to go back to the day this happened. From what you can remember, walk us through kind of how you remember the day unfolding. It actually kind of started the night before, on August 7th. I remember friends and I, we went out for late night sushi out in Kihei, and we all went our separate ways. I have a friend who lives up in Kula, and she texted me shortly after midnight saying, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm home safe, but I don't have any power, and my neighbors and we don't have any power. Do you know anything that's going on?" And I think I quickly searched maybe our H&N app. I tried to do like a Google search. I looked on our Slack, emails. I couldn't find anything. And again, it was after midnight. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. I'm sure everything is fine. And so we went to sleep. And I woke up that morning pretty early, and I was aware of 2 fires that had broken out. The Kula fire, which at that time I realized that it was a fire. I think that broke out shortly after midnight. And then there was also the Lahaina fire. And so I was torn on where to go first. Do I go to West Maui or do I go up country? I decided to go up country because at that time it seemed as if that was the bigger fire. At that time we didn't know how bad Lahaina was, and actually the fire department ended up calling that fire contained, and I think it was. And so I decided to go up country, and I did my live shot with you folks This Is Now at noon, not knowing at all what was going on in Lahaina, figuring or realizing or thinking that everything was okay. And so the plan was to eventually make my way out there, but when I got there, I realized how windy upcountry was, and so I decided to stay. And I did a live shot with you folks, and I was indoors at that shelter at the community center up in Pukalani. And I remember you asking me specifically, like, what's the conditions like outside? I see you indoors. And I answered, well, it's so windy outside, I can't be outside because my camera will fly everywhere. My hat was flying all over the place. And so that's why I was indoors specifically after 6 o'clock. Shortly after 6 o'clock, I was getting phone calls that things were not well in Lahaina.
It was so hard even for us to gauge the scope of it because, of course, communication lines were down. We didn't see the first videos on social media until the next morning when people were able to make it out of Lahaina and find a signal to upload things. We are several months out from this disaster. What do the people of Maui still need?
A huge issue that we're facing right now, and we will be facing for years to come, we need housing. We need long-term permanent housing for all the thousands of displaced residents. They're still being shuffled back and forth from hotel to hotel, constantly having deadlines. We need to be out by this date, and not even knowing, still not really having a clear answer of where am I going to sleep next week or where am I going to be next month. And it's especially hard now because of the holidays. Talking to people, it was so sad. Even Thanksgiving, a lot of them didn't even get to enjoy a nice Thanksgiving meal because they don't have a kitchen where they're staying, or they don't have a dining room table to invite family over. They're staying at hotels. And so that's one thing that I believe is extremely important, and that's something that they need. We need to all figure out as a community now. That's something that I know the mayor is working on, and he's asking for voluntary compliance from the industry. And so those Lahaina Strong people are out there, and they said they're not going anywhere until they find long-term housing.
Yeah. Our Chelsea Davis, it's so good to have you in-house, Chelsea. Thank you again so much for your work on Maui. We appreciate you, and I know our viewers, our community appreciates you as well. Our Chelsea Davis here in the H&N Digital Center.
It was so awesome to hug Chelsea yesterday.
It was.
We needed that.
Yeah.
All right, let's take you live outside now. This camera is looking at Wailea, Maui. We do have a first alert weather day posted today. We're going to have much more news coming up after a quick break. Mortgage rates continue to drop. For the 5th straight week, rates are even lower. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell to an average of 7.22%. A year ago, the average 30-year fixed rate was 6.49%. Freddie Mac's chief economist says the continued rate decline is due to market sentiment shifting over the last month, and says this is good news for potential home buyers as purchase application activity is on the rise. But with the housing market still low on inventory, competition is likely to pick up among potential buyers. Experts believe the recent mortgage rate decline could be a sign that rates have peaked for this cycle.
And a reminder, Investigates TV is coming up at 12:30 on K5 right after This Is Now. Here's a look at what they're working on.
Next time on Investigate TV Plus, rare access inside the Drug Enforcement Administration.
In my 20 years with DEA, this is the most deadly drug that I've seen.
See efforts to track down counterfeit prescription pills laced with fentanyl.
Plus, a family claims a patient died unnecessarily after being placed on a do not resuscitate order without their knowledge.
I said, you don't understand, she's not capable of signing a DNR.
What our investigation revealed about dozens of other patients.
Well, a Christmas caper is going down in Lexington, Kentucky. A man is looking for the person who may or may not have shot his inflatable Saint Nick. It's also possible that Santa popped himself. Jeannie Moose has more.
Santa is known for using a sleigh. Oh. But could this have been an attempt to slay Santa? Instead of singing about him,
Santa Claus is coming.
Did someone try to zing him? Donald Nelson heard a noise outside his Lexington, Kentucky home the other night.
Kind of like a small bang or whatever.
Nelson checked his surveillance video, which showed a car going by, a popping sound, and then Santa deflating. Was this a drive-by shooting similar to when Frosty the Snowman was attacked by a masked man who jumped out of a pickup and slashed Frosty back in 2016 in St. Louis?
It's just mean-spirited. I mean, it's silly vandalism.
But to try to take out Santa seems even worse.
Santa! Oh my God!
No wonder Santa's owner was mad.
Discharging a firearm at someone's home.
But there's a plot twist. Lexington police tell CNN all possibilities are being looked into, even possibly overinflation, meaning Santa may have popped himself. Whatever happened left Santa with an 18-inch hole that neighbors offered to help sew up. Next thing you know, Santa will be arming himself. For $93, you can get a 6-foot Santa dressed in camo with a sack of presents in one hand and a gun in the other. Looking ready to hunt reindeer rather than drive them. Jeannie Moose, CNN.
Well, who would attack
New
Santa
York.
Claus?
Yeah, it's a mystery.
The Grinch, that's who. Thanks for sticking with us. Before we end today, I want to send one special shout out to my very own mother, Leanne Sasan. Reason being, today is her final day at First Hawaiian Bank Lihue. She is retiring after 32 years working at that branch. This is a photo from our Thanksgiving weekend. My sister Samantha there and my mom, we actually got her a little trophy that said 32 years, congratulations. First Hawaiian Bank is really one of the things it's a core memory as a child. I was one of the only children in the workroom because mom would have to work all the way until 5 o'clock. Yep. So after school, she wouldn't know what to do with me. So I'd go there up into the workroom, lunchroom, and just kind of sit and wait. And I remember there was a window over where she would look, and I would kind of knock from time to time, and she'd look up and wave. And so she spent many years at Lihue branch. Then she moved to Kukui Grove, and she's kind of been filling in around Kauai. And a lot of people on Kauai know her from her role at the bank. So Mom, congratulations on 32 years. Happy retirement to you. She is going on to a next chapter, but I'll let her explain it later. Let's go ahead.
Auntie.
Yes, thank you. Let's go ahead and send it outside one more time for a live look. This is Honolulu on Kauai's North Shore. Not so bad, but remember, there is still the threat for heavy showers throughout the rest of today and possibly tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Aloha.
Aloha.